Alright, what's going on, guys? This is GDM Garage, and today we're going to be putting a cold air intake on my Jetta. So if you haven't already checked out my unboxing video that I did when I bought the cold air intake, go ahead and click the link right here. And without further ado, let's go ahead and install the cold air intake. Alright guys, here we are in the engine bay with our intake over here. Let's go ahead and put it on. Alright, so step one, as you can see here, we need to remove the wire harness tray, and it shows pulling the wire harness tray out right there. But as you can see on my car, I don't actually have a wire harness tray. If you in your car, if you do, that would be step one. You're supposed to pull the box cover straight up off the box and squeeze the tabs and lift it out. But on my car, since I don't have one, I won't need to be doing that, so I can skip that first step. Alright, so now we're on to step two. The next one, it shows here, we need to remove the screws that are here, and here. As you can see right in this little diagram right here. Alright, so for the next step, we need to remove this bolt right here, which is the battery hold down bolt. And we're going to need a 14mm wrench, socket wrench. Alright, now we have our battery connector piece out, and let's go ahead and proceed to the next step. Alright guys, so I actually missed a step a while back, so you'll see in a bunch of the future parts up to where I take the stock airbox out, that the battery's still in the car. Actually, I was supposed to remove the battery. I forgot to do that. So after you take down the battery hold down bolt, make sure we undo the battery, and we'll go ahead and lift that thing out, and I'll show you how to do that right now. Alright, let's go ahead and remove the battery. Here we go. Alright, once you get all your leads off of your battery, go ahead and pop up your handle if you got one. And be aware, batteries are very heavy, and whoops, pop out the battery. Alright, so the next step is to unplug the wire harness from the mass airflow sensor. So let's go ahead and do that. Lean that up against the something right there so it's not like dangling around everywhere. There you go. Alright, next it says to loosen the hose clamp for the mass airflow sensor right here. So go ahead and grab the Phillips head screwdriver, and there we go. You saw it move right there. All good to go. Our next step is to remove the breather hose from the airbox. So to do that, we just need to get our hands in here somehow. There we go. And squeeze the top and the bottom. There we have it. The breather hose is removed. Alright, next step is to remove the bolts that hold on the stock airbox assembly. Mine's already loose, so all I need to do is just use this thing. Don't need the ratchet wrench, but for reference, this is a 10mm socket. There we go. For that, you should get this big washer right here. Just like that. Move that off to the side so you know what you're doing. There should be another one right down there, but mine's already undone down there. Alright, so my car was actually missing a few things, but there's one of the bolts right there. For reference, there's the airbox. One of the bolts on the 1.8T gas engine is right there, and the other bolt, I don't know if you can see it, but it's right down there. and there's the airbox for you guys, and then there's the bolt. So those two need to get removed. Alright, so for the next step, we need to remove the nut. Mine is actually already removed, but right there, right here, we need to remove this nut that holds on the lower duct assembly. If my camera would focus, it'd look better, but oh well. That bolt needs to be removed, that holds on the lower duct assembly. I need to remove the MAF and the stock airbox from the car. So this is the step right after we undo all the bolts. I need to actually go get a Phillips head screwdriver so I can pop the tip off from the mass airflow. Alright, so let's go ahead and take the tip, aka turbo inlet pipe, off of our mass airflow sensor. Just use a screwdriver, it really helps to just prise the hose off easily. It might take you a little bit to actually get it off because hoses are stubborn. Especially on engines that have a little bit more miles. Alright, so now that we got the turbo inlet pipe off, aka tip, there goes the directions. Our stock airbox should just come right out. Alright guys, here you have it. There's our stock airbox. I finally got it out. But gotta go ahead and remove your lower air duct. So the next step would be to remove the battery tray. Go ahead and go back to your trusty, I think it's, 10mm socket. And put that back on your ratchet wrench, because that's the tool we'll be using. And let's get this battery box out. Alright, so after we remove the battery tray, our next step is we're going to want to remove this right here. So all you gotta do is put your hands on either, like the MAF sensor, these things look the same. You're gonna want to stick your finger underneath both of them and just pop it right up. And there you have it. Alright guys, so as per our instructions here, our next step is to jack up the car and blah blah blah, refer to the owner's manual, support it properly, blah blah blah. But as it shows here, jack up the front of the car and remove the driver's side wheel well so we can have access to where our cold air intake is going to go. So that's the next step, and let's go ahead and start with that. Alright, so now that we have the wheel well bolts pretty much removed, let's go ahead and proceed to the next step. Alright guys, so I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see this, but way back up in here. Okay, so I'll put some arrows, but right in the very left top of the car, we need to squeeze those two pins and undo that thing right there. The thing that we're actually removing is going to be this thing right here, where my finger's pointing to, or I'll get a little bit closer in the shot. This thing right here, we're removing this. This is the clip that holds this part right here for the wire harness on. So now that this is out, we can go ahead and see the next step. For our next step, it wants us to remove the plastic rivets located here and here, which should be about here and here on the engine bay. Whoop, stepping on some Allen keys. So let's go ahead and get that done. Alright guys, so I finally got the stupid plastic rivet out. This thing is pretty loose now, this little tray. So after you get those two plastic rivets out on the top, there's one more underneath that I need to go ahead and do, and I'm not going to be able to catch that with the camera. Just for reference again on taking out the rivets, since obviously the camera work's not going to be really good on this one. On my guide, plastic rivets, remove the two plastic rivets along the top edge, as it says located here and here. And then they're released by pushing the center through, like I already said. And then for this one, remove the one plastic rivet underneath the headlight housing. This is the next step that I'm not going to be able to film. And then the last step after you remove those two is pull the plastic away from the engine bay, and it won't be reused with the intake system. Alright guys, so we're back. After lots of trouble, we finally got the housing out. This is what the housing looks like. Sorry, I kind of pulled it out without showing you guys, but I had a little bit of trouble with that too. So this is the air housing. Well, let's retry that. So this is the air housing. This is the way it comes out. Fits in kind of like that. But anyways, here it is, and we'll go ahead and put it over here. So this is actually the part that's not going to be reused with the new system, but that's okay. So now that we're all done with that, it's time to get on to the installation. Alright guys, so once you have all of these stuff cleaned out of your engine bay, we are ready to start installation. Now let's proceed and let's get going on installation. Alright guys, so one of the first things that we have to do to start the installation is we need to remove the original MAF, mass airflow sensor, which is this right here. So as you can see, there is one screw right here and another screw right here. So let's go ahead and remove these two screws. There it is. Alright guys, so for our next step of the process, we're going to want to install our mass airflow sensor into our stock turbo inlet pipe right there. So for this way, there's actually an arrow on the front of this. I don't know if you can see it, if the camera would focus. There it is right there, not in focus, but you can see the outline of it. There's actually an arrow that says which way the airflow is supposed to go. So this thing is actually supposed to go this way. You make sure, don't want to get it backwards. You'll always know which way it's supposed to go because the stock mounts from the airbox are going to be facing the outside of the engine, so it's going to want to go in like this. Make sure you're following the way the airflow is going. So we're just going to want to put this back on the car by inserting it back into our stock or whatever you have turbo inlet pipe. So just pop that back on there with the stock hose clamp. Go ahead and make sure your mass airflow sensor is all the way tightened on. And then make sure your thing is facing so that when you go to reinstall the lead from the wire harness back, it's all good to go. So let's go ahead and tighten down that hose clamp just a little bit, just so that it stays on there and it's not moving around, and we'll go ahead and tighten it the rest of the way later, just in case we need to shift it around or something. And it's going to be a lot easier to tighten it once we actually have the intake in and mounted, so it's not flopping all over the place when we're trying to tighten it. So there we go, we got the mass airflow sensor installed, and let's go ahead and head on to the next step. Alright guys, so now that we have our mass airflow sensor connected to our stock turbo inlet pipe or whatever turbo inlet pipe you have, we're going to want to take the coupler that came with your system and the two hose clamps. So what we want to do for this step is, it's really simple. The only thing that we need to do is loosely, for the current moment, you want to make sure it's tight when we're all said and done. We want to loosely install this coupler onto our mass airflow sensor, and then we take one of our hose clamps and we thread it on. Well, I mean, we don't have to thread it on, but slip it over the edge and make sure your thing is nice and tight on that edge right there. And then we're going to want to go ahead and tighten up this hose clamp. You would normally use a Phillips head screwdriver, but since mine's messed up, I am using a ratchet wrench. Alright guys, so the next step of the process after we have our coupler on the mass airflow sensor is to go ahead and grab one of these supplied washers that came with your kit. Take one of the supplied washers, there it is, and go ahead and snip it on this part right here. And there you go. Alright, so with that installed, we are ready to head on to the next step. Alright guys, so we are almost ready to install our cold air intake. But for now, we just have one more piece of mounting hardware to do. So underneath this little hose, not little, I don't even know if I can see that, but there's a little hole right there. You should be able to see right through the ground, right where my finger's pointing. There's a little hole right there, and when I test fitted my what's it called? Mind blank. When I test fitted my cold air intake tube, that's where I needed to install my mounting kit. So these four holes right here are for the battery tray. There was a hole right next to it. I don't know what for. And then there was one more hole behind it underneath this hose, as you can see right there. And when I fitted up my cold air intake tube, that's where the mounting hole happened to be. So for that part, what you're going to want to do in the instructions is you're going to want to take this piece and you're going to want to take these two washers off of it, and you install the rubber part underneath this part with the, oops, I was out of the camera. You install this rubber part underneath here because the cold air intake thing goes underneath, goes down under, and then it sits on this so it won't vibrate and make a bunch of like noises and gets annoying. So this rubber thing goes underneath the car, and then one washer goes on top of it and one washer goes underneath it, and it helps secure it. And then the other end of this is poking up through right here where you secure it down. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get that installed. Alright guys, so I've started to test fit my cold air intake system, but as you can kind of see right there in that top, or in the bottom right corner, where that big hose is, there's the starting of my mounting process. I don't know if we'll be able to see under here. Okay, you can start to see there right in the middle of the screen where that nut and washer and rubber grommet are. That's the other part of the mounting process. Once you get that inserted, whoops, I'll include a link to the AEM instructions for this kit. But once you get your mounting hardware all in there, then you're going to want to start to test fit your cold air intake, and I'll go into more detail in a second. I just wanted to show you got the hardware in there. So now that we've got the hardware in there, let's go ahead and start test fitting our cold air intake and throw everything together. Alright guys, so now that we have all the mounting brackets installed in the engine, it's time to go ahead and fit our cold air intake. Wow, which is really close. Okay, so next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to grab our last hose clamp, and instead of sliding it over this to prevent possible scratching, let's go ahead and slide it over our rubber bracket thing again. When we go ahead and install this into the car, you can't really see, but there's a little, like, you can kind of see, it's like the beginning, there's a little little hole right down there before it goes into the wheel well. Let me see if I can tip it a little bit forward. There you go, right about there, and that's where we're going to put it down. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to stick this down here so that it kind of turn it a little bit so it kind of fits, and then we're going to want to turn it back so the forks, once we get it down in that hole a little bit, gotta get it just right. Don't get frustrated, it can take a little bit. Get it under that cable, and then we're gonna turn it right back, and then make sure it's pushed out a little bit so we're not catching on the mounting hardware down there. And then now that we have that in there, we're gonna go ahead and fit everything up. So this needs to go inside our coupler right here. Just insert that right in. Should go all the way in. And then as we're raising this up, this piece needs to mount right onto this right here. Okay? And then once we have that, we're not quite there yet. This washer actually needs to be in front like this. We're not quite there yet, but this stock bolt will hold on right there, just like that. I'm actually not going to proceed with that yet because I'm going to need to line up underneath. I can't camera underneath because it's too hard to get the camera and everything under there right now, since the car's not jacked up. But make sure you line up your forks underneath so everything mounts, and it's probably going to be a good idea to go ahead and tighten up the mounts underneath so that it will hold in the position that you want, and then we can do the side mount right in the side of the engine bay right there. And then once we're done with that, we'll tighten up our coupler right there, and then we'll put our K&N filter on and finish everything up. So I'm going to go ahead and fit all my stuff in the bottom of the engine, and I'll record what I can. Alright guys, so here we are. I got the intake all bolted in. Remember there was one mounting place right here, and one mounting place down here under the wheel well. But now that we've got that all in, it's time to proceed to the next step. I mean, this is a little difficult. It took 2 people for me, one to hold the wrench so that I wasn't spinning up here, and then I needed both my hands down under. But other than that, it wasn't too bad. Took us probably 10 minutes once I got 2 of us in there. But I got that installed, and let's go ahead and get to the rest of the steps. Alright guys, so I'm going to do my best not to get in the middle or in the way of the camera, but for our next step, one of the final steps actually, is to go ahead and install our filter. So as you can see, hose clamp right here, and then at the end of the filter we're just going to slip that on, tighten down the hose clamp, and should be good to go. Let's get to it and install our filter. Make sure you get this as tight as possible. So just go ahead and give it one more twist, nice and tight on there, and there's your install of the filter. So that's pretty much it for installing. But anyways, there's your filter install. Let's go ahead and proceed to the last few steps, and we'll have installed an intake. Alright, I'm not sure how well you can see this. I'm actually holding the camera this time, but there's a little nipple on the edge of our intake right here, right there, and that's for the breather hose, which attaches to this thing right here. So let's go ahead and proceed to that step. Alright guys, so for this next step, you're going to need this part, and we're going to install this into the breather hose. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at our breather hose and see where these machined clips go. So the machine clips, which are right here and here, they just go ahead and attach right onto your thing. You got to make sure you push on that pretty good so it stays. Don't want that popping off. But if you ever would need to release that, you just squeeze in the sides. But now that I got mine all in, now that we got this all in and attached, alright guys, and now when your engine bay looks like this, you put everything back together, you have successfully installed your cold air intake. Thanks for watching, please rate, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye. Back in the box. I don't know why I took that out. Anyways, there's our
the inside. You want to get the sides. I already did a coat, so I'm just gonna do a light coat, but make sure you get all around.